Hi there. I and my buddy Joe English are sending our regards. Today we would like to do some ACT English section test questions together. So let's share the PDF. All right, today's passage is entitled A Garden of Verses. Let's read the first sentence and look at the first question. Compose poetry while working in the yard. My friend told and advised me so that your muscles will activate your creative juices. All right, told and advised. You know that told and advised, um, we have two words, and then we have a choice told, and then informed and told, narrated and related. As you know, on the ACT, shortest is better if it makes sense and if it conveys the meaning. So he wants to say, my friend told me, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Yeah. So B is the best choice. Let's move to number two. I concluded that my friend's suggestion was wildly eccentric. All right. No change, F. Or let's look at the other choices. Way off base and too wacky, too weird for me, man. Okay. And then absurdly irrational and utterly blah, blah, blah. So J is not the answer because it's way too long. And H is when you say too weird for me, man, is a little bit too uh, informal and also longer than wildly eccentric, way off base and wacky. So again, uh, it is longer. So we go for the shorter one, no change, F, because it makes sense. So he wants to say this advice of writing poetry while working on the garden was kind of weird or strange uh, to him. So F is the best answer for two. Moving to number three now. Um, yeah, was prompted. Yes, I recognized, however, that her advice was prompted by my complaints about writer's block. Okay, by or from or to. No, we say complaint about. So a no change is the best answer. This is like collocation or uh, preposition question. We say complaint about or complain about. Okay, so A is the best answer. Let's have a look at number four. Here he says, my writer's block has become a familiar burden, comma, and I have tried to alleviate by striking my computer keyboard. No change. It doesn't sound very natural to say so. Although if we have two ICs separated by a comma and one of the femboys is correct. But if we look at G, it makes more sense because which here refers back to the burden. So if we read, my writer's block has become a familiar burden which I have tried to alleviate, that makes more sense. So G is the best answer. Okay, let's now move to number five, where he says, as I pushed the lawnmower back and forth with all my strength, I composed a couplet. The graceful grass beneath my feet is crushed and blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever. So in number five, which choice would best help establish that the narrator is bored with the gardening task? So bored. We want to stress this. Would we leave it as it is with all my strength? No, that doesn't denote any boredom. So A is not the right answer. B, in a monotonous marsh, yes, that reflects somebody being bored, monotonous. C, as grass clipping covered my shoes, no. And D, slowly and carefully, no, that doesn't reflect being bored. So the best answer that reflects being bored is B, in a monotonous marsh. Okay, so far so good. Let's move to number six. Here he says in number 6, chuckling under my breath at my little poem, the lawnmower picked up speed and soon finished mowing the lawn. Okay, what is the best answer here? No change, or the speed picked up, or I picked up the speed, H or J speed at last was picking up. So the lawnmower doesn't pick up speed on its own. So in sentences like this, we should identify who is the subject. I am the subject. So I subject and picked up speed. Pick up speed is pick up is the verb and then speed is the object. So H is the best answer. So the lone mower doesn't pick up speed on its own. The sentence should read, I picked up speed and soon finished mowing the lawn. And that also goes with the rest of the sentence. The meaning is logical here. I picked up speed and soon finished mowing the lawn. So H is the best answer. All right, moving to number 7. Yes, the next yard chore was to prune the rose bushes that once had formed, etc. So here the point is was, comma, to prune. Okay, we should not separate was and to prune here with a comma. So the chore was, and then we mention what the chore was without any comments. So no punctuation is B. All right. So if we read the yard chore was to prune the rose bushes that once had formed a red cascade. Okay. So B is the best answer. Also remember on the ACT, if you have choices and one of them is without any punctuation and it makes sense, always go for the one without punctuation. All right, let's move to number 8. Here, he says, formed a red cascade of flowers on the wall, which of the two poetic attempts was splendid, but at least words and the writer's clay were forming into a few images. Should we leave it as it is? No, it doesn't sound natural. Not each, or either, or neither of the two. Okay? Either or neither of the two. If we read one more time, yeah, rose bushes that once had formed a red cascade of flowers on the wall. Neither of the two poetic attempts was splendid. Yeah, he's saying that he, at 2 times, he tried to write poetry while working on the garden, like mowing the grass and so on, acting according to his friend's advice, which he advised him at the beginning of the paragraph. So he wants to say neither of the two attempts was splendid, but at least some words and some images began to form. So at his first 2 attempts to write poetry while working on the garden, neither of the two, he wants to say, neither of the two attempts was successful that much or was splendid, but it was okay. So the best choice here is for 8 is J, neither. Neither of the two poetic attempts. Moving on to number 9, reading number 9 here. Okay. Neither was splendid, but at least words, comma, the writer's clay were forming into a few images. So should we leave it as it is, or should we try something better? He wants to say these words are the writer's clay, as if he's like somebody who is forming something with clay. In other words, clay is an appositive for words. So we should put the writer's clay in between 2 commas. and which is choice C. If you look at the choices, you will find that only choice C has the writer's clay between two commas, and so that should be the best answer because the writer's clay is an appositive for words. Okay, so if you read it, but at least words, the writer's clay were forming into a few images. So when you make your choice, just try to read the sentence. If it makes sense, if it sounds natural, then your answer is correct. Okay, let's now move to number 10. Yes, reading number 10. Yeah, these images were not going to dazzle the literary world. Conversely, or in addition, or however, or nevertheless. The best answer here is however. Yeah. All right. So they are okay attempts at writing poetry, but they are not going to dazzle or amaze the world. So, however, here is the best answer. They are not going to dazzle the world or the literary world, however. So, however, H is the best answer. Moving on to 11 now, reading from the beginning of 11. Yeah, here 11. He wants to say, for the sake of logic and coherence, sentence 2 should be placed where it is, or before sentence 1, or before, after sentence 3, or after sentence 4. All right, questions like these, I advise you to leave them at the end of the test because they will require you to go and read these sentences and so on. If you can manage the time well and do these kinds of questions, uh, after in their order presented for you, that's fine. If not, if you feel they will take longer time, then leave them to the end. And if you have time, you can do that. If you don't have time, you just make any of the choose one of the choices that are offered in the question. So if we look at 11, okay, let's have a look at sentence 2, and then we can decide if we put it where it is or choose one of these choices. Where's sentence 2? Yes, here. The next yard chore was to prune the rose bushes that once had formed a red cascade of flowers on the wall. Should we leave it as it is, or should we put it before sentence 1? Sentence 1 says, as I quickly clipped off the dead blossoms, I experimented with similes. So the blossoms is something related to the roses. Okay, so we should put sentence 2 before sentence 1 because it makes sense. He could start the paragraph by saying the next yard chore was to prune the rose bushes that once had formed a red cascade of flowers on the wall. As I quickly clipped off the dead blossoms, I experimented with similes. So that would make sense. Put it before sentence 1. So here, before sentence 1 is choice B. So choice B is the best answer for 11. Let's now move to 12. Read 12. The dried up roses also led me philosophize with a metaphor. The dried up roses also led me to. That sounds natural. We don't need any punctuation here. All right. Yeah. The dried up roses. So G is not the best answer because rose apostrophe S, this is for possessive case. Roses also led me, we don't need a comma after also or before also. So the best answer is leave it as it is without any punctuation. If you want to make sure, then read the sentence one more time. The dried up roses also led me to philosophize with the metaphor. That sounds good. Nothing bad about it. So it's correct. How about number 13? Originality was not blessing my thoughts, comma, and my little experiment was producing a neat yard but bad poetry. Okay, so no change sounds okay. We have two ICs joined by a comma and one of the fanboys and, which is permissible, no problem with that. We don't need to change it to when or and if. Okay, so read it one more time. Originality was not blessing my thoughts, and my little experiment was producing a neat yard but bad poetry. That sounds correct. So the best choice is A. Moving to 14, yeah, the writer is considering deleting the preceding sentence. If the sentence were deleted, the essay would primarily lose what? So let's read the preceding sentence. It was time to mutter my special incant, incantation and drink a cup of strong coffee. It was time to mutter my special incantation and drink a cup of strong coffee. If the writer were to delete this sentence, the essay would lose what? A stylistic link to the introductory paragraph or a summary of the preceding paragraph? No, that's not a summary. A restatement of the essay's thesis? No, okay, because the essay doesn't say drink cup of strong coffee or mutter my special incantation or an explanation of an apparent contradiction. There's no contradiction here. So F is the best answer. A stylistic link to the introductory paragraph. So if we're not sure of the answer of such questions, then use process of elimination, which means eliminate the choices you are sure are wrong. So we eliminate G and then H and then J. Then the remaining one is F. So this must be the answer. So 14, F. Let's move to 15 now. This is about the whole passage. All right. Yeah. Um, Suppose the writer had chosen to write how to article for people starting to write poetry. Would this essay fulfill the writer's goal? No, this doesn't fulfill the writer's goal. So A and B would be wrong. Let's look at C and D. No, because this essay lightheartedly discussed how one writer tests a single hypothesis to overcome writer's block. That sounds the best answer. But let's have a look at D. No, because readers of this essay are not given an indication of the level of professionalism of the writer. No, he's simply somebody who suffers from the writer's block. When he tries to write poetry, it takes him a long, long time to do so. So his friend advised him, while you are working on the garden, like pruning the garden and so forth, try writing some poetry, or at least in your mind. And then when you finish your pruning work, you can write down what you have thought of. And he tried this sometimes, and it worked. It didn't produce fantastic poetry, according to the passage, but it worked sometimes. So here, it's about his own special experiment with doing that. It doesn't advise anybody who tries to write poetry how to do so, or it's not the best way to write poetry while pruning your garden or anything like that. It's just a personal experience of the writer, of this particular writer, simply because he was suffering from the writer's block when he tries to write poetry using his computer keyboard or paper and pencil or whatever. So his friend advised him to do so. So C is the best answer to that question. As I said, the one tip for people who are sitting for the ACT test is leave the longer questions to the end of the passage. And if you have time, find the answer, like read carefully before you answer. If you don't have time, you just have to make a choice. Don't leave any question unanswered. And my other tip is that whatever happens, remain calm. Losing a question here or there is not the end of the world. You can still get the score that you want and join the university or college that you want. In other words, if you not answering a question negatively affects you, this will lead to what they say, what they call the halo effect. And this will be carried with you to the other questions, maybe negatively affecting your answering them. So then you are doubling the problem. Instead of having one or two questions uh, answered incorrectly, then you'll have like four or five questions answered incorrectly. Okay? So focus, be aware of your time, and when you answer the questions, answer your question and forget completely about it and go to the other question. It's okay to make some mistakes here or there. As I said, since you get your score that you need to join your university, then you did it. Okay? Thank you. Stay positive, and we will meet in the next one.